So the video's on. We are at Picante restaurant in Berkeley with Chris and his old-time pal Walter.
Yeah, Walter.
And Chris is going to have tamales today,
Right.
and
I'm having the carnitas burrito.
oh, nice. And I'm having shrimp tacos. Yeah. And there's all this up here decoration. It's like 3 o'clock. Okay, short video and a picture. We're here at Picante restaurant in Berkeley City. There's Picante. It's about 5 o'clock and we finished eating. And it's Chris and Walter here.
Walter, and heading to the lecture.
We're heading to the Thom Hartmann lecture in 2 hours. Tom had, not Tom, Chris had the tamales, Walter had a burrito, and I had the shrimp tacos. And yeah, that's them. All right. Here is the Picante restaurants in Berkeley. And you want to scroll back like this? Okay, well, I'm scrolling now. And there they are again. Oh, today is February 17th? Yeah. Alrighty.
President's Day.
President's Day. Alright, today we are at the Thom Hartmann book promoting event. And here's Chris. We just got here not long ago. We're sitting in the front. And show me the book, Chris. Alright, so the book is called The War on Voting. And we're a little early, so I'm gonna get a little video of this place. This is the front with the stage, and this is the room of people. Sarah invited us here. This is the front of the lecture hall. These are the paintings. I don't know what this has to do with anything. Hello. Oh, Chris just wanted me to record and say, hi, this is Sarah.
Hi, this is Sarah.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi, I'm Chris.
He likes to document and like look back and put them on his TV and stuff. Yeah. And these are the books that Thom Hartmann's promoting today. These are his cards. Put some in the bag. Let's see. It's a little dark. Booksmith. Oh, this one. Berkeley Arts and Letters, Thom Hartmann.
Who else is coming?
All
I
right.
under Judith Fisher. I have 2 tickets and a book.
And this is the back.
Hey, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and welcome to Berkeley Arts and Lectures. Berkeley Arts and Lectures is a program run out of the Booksmith, an independent bookstore in the Haight in San Francisco. And the premise of our series is simple. We host extraordinary writers with extraordinary new books. Just to give you a sense of what's next on our calendar, this Thursday we'll be back here at the Hillside Club hosting Christine Carter. And then on March 31st we'll be at First Congregational Church here in Berkeley hosting Linda Sarsour. Also at First Congregational Church will be Sean King on May 8th. And then back here on June 10th for Alexandra Petrie. And so for more information about our events and to buy tickets, go to berkeleyarts.org. We're thrilled to have Thom Hartmann here tonight and to be celebrating his new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. And what better day than President's Day to be talking about voting. Here's how tonight is going to work. Thom will be up here talking about his book for about 45 minutes. Then we'll have a brief Q&A, and then Thom will be, if you didn't get a chance to get your book signed before the event, Thom will be signing books in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Thom, and then we'll get the show on the road. And Thom asked me to keep the bio brief, so I'm going to keep it really brief. Thom Hartmann is a progressive, national and internationally syndicated talk show host. He is the author of 32 books. Please help me welcome Thom Hartmann.
taking care of all this and handling the books and making all this work. It's much appreciated. It's so nice to see you. Can you hear me back there in the cheap seats? Yeah. Okay. All right. I figured I'd first talk a little bit about how we got here in terms of how politics have evolved through the 20th century and into the 21st century, and why voting is such a big issue generally, and how it became a partisan issue as opposed to just an issue. And then maybe after that, go back a little bit and explain the Electoral College and some of the stuff about the Electoral College and how that came about and what's going on with that. And then, we'll just throw it open to questions and we'll see how that goes. So to start my little history lesson here tonight, in 1920, I mean, there's obviously history before that, but in 1920 was the beginning of the modern political era, really. Warren Harding was running for president on the Republican side. He was running on a platform of deregulation and privatization. His slogan was more business in government, less government in business. And then he had a second slogan, which was a return to normalcy. Now this was just after World War I. The country was in a terrible recession in 1920. Some anarchists had just bombed Wall Street. There were massive strikes going on. There were race riots going on in Chicago. I mean, all this stuff, there was all this ferment, all this post-war ferment. And it was also post the flu epidemic of 1918. The country was just like this. And so, but the return to normalcy, actually what he was talking about specifically was dropping the top income tax rate from the 91% where it was set to pay for World War I down to something lower. He dropped it down to 25%. So he was running on the Republican side. And on the Democratic side was a guy named James Cox, and his vice presidential candidate was somebody you're probably familiar with. His name was Franklin Roosevelt. And that was the 1920 campaign. And Harding took it in a landslide because Wilson, who preceded him, who had just died, was not particularly popular at that point. And he screwed a bunch of things up, and he was pushing for the League of Nations, and people were like, let's take care of America first, and it was just a mess. But at that point in time, Harding was very, very clear. I mean, less government in business, more business in government. He was very, very clear that the Republican Party was the party of big business. It was the party of the Mellons and the Scaife and the Rockefellers and and they were unashamed of it. And Cox and Franklin Roosevelt were running as the party of working people, and we're going to support the strikers and the unions, and someday we're actually going to write into law that people who have who work have rights, and unions have rights, and all this wild stuff. And Harding's policies took us right straight into the Great Depression. The Roaring '20s were, some people characterize it as a great time for America. It actually wasn't. The average income of working people from 1920 to 1929 actually declined. Poverty actually increased. But at the very top, there was this explosion of wealth as the stock market exploded. And of course, it all crashed down in 1929, which brought us the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, who had lost that vice presidential run in 1920. He won in 1932. He came back. And from that 1920 election forward, the Republican Party had pretty much stayed as the party of big business and rich people, and the Democratic Party pretty much stayed as the party of working people. And they figured out after the crash, this was now we're up to 1952, that when Dwight Eisenhower ran for president, that on a platform of ending the Korean War, in fact, he had his television ad showed an elephant walking across a stage like this with a big drum, and he was beating the drum, and it had the word peace on it. And many of you probably heard me play it on my show. It was like, vote for Eisenhower, vote for peace, a paid film. And that was his commercial. And so Eisenhower became a quote moderate Republican. As he wrote a letter to his brother Edgar, who was just a right-wing crazy, who was saying, you got to shut down the Social Security thing that Franklin Roosevelt put into place, and you got to stop the labor unions. And Eisenhower wrote him a letter saying, if any politician were ever to destroy the labor unions and shut down Social Security, that politician and their political party would cease to exist. He says, I know that there are a few people, particularly a couple of billionaires down in Texas, or he was speaking of the Hunts, I believe, who think this is possible, but their number is small and they are stupid. And so, the Republicans got it that they had to at least throw a bone to labor. In 1956, when Eisenhower ran for re-election, he ran for re-election on the platform of the fact that he had added 2 million people to Social Security, he expanded Social Security, and that over 3 million people had joined unions during the 4 years that he was president, from 52 to 56. And he won re-election overwhelmingly. In the election in 1960, John Kennedy came in after he was assassinated. He had a very ambitious agenda after he was assassinated. Now we see the swing, back to Democratic policies. And when he was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson, who was the master of the Senate, I mean, he was the Mitch McConnell of the day. He ran the Senate with an iron fist. And he got things done, and he got them done. Things that probably he couldn't have done, and Jack Kennedy probably couldn't have done if Kennedy hadn't been assassinated. He'd get up there and he'd get on TV and he'd say, do this for Jack. And the Republicans would kind of hang their heads in shame and say, okay, all right, we'll go along. And he got past Medicare and Medicaid and a number of what we call welfare programs, food stamps, and long-term unemployment insurance got expanded dramatically. That had started under Franklin Roosevelt in 1935. So Lyndon Johnson really nailed down the Democratic Party as being still the party, and this was through right up to 1968, as still being the party of Franklin Roosevelt. This was the party of the people. And Nixon came into office in 68. You've heard me tell the story many times. Nixon committed treason. LBJ had cut a deal with the Vietnamese, both the North and the South, but specifically with the South, to end the Vietnam War. And in late September, early October, there was supposed to be a meeting in Paris where they were going to sign the agreement that he had already worked out. And of course, Hubert Humphrey, as vice president, was running for president, and that would have catapulted him into the White House. Not to mention the fact that
When you did that live broadcast from the Bronx Theater, and I'll never forget it because it had the courthouse right behind me.
Okay, Chris. I'm recording Chris. We finished the Thom Hartmann lecture. It's about 8:30 p.m. Monday. It's actually President's Day. Chris is gonna get oh, you guys can pass through. No worries. And we're gonna get a little video and then a photo with Chris. All right, this is a video, then I'll do a photo. I know. Oh, you guys can come through. No worries. All right.